Welcome to the Next Class 2.0 with host Rob Birdsell, Kent Hickey, and Erin Barisano. Join us as we discuss the latest trends and innovations shaping education.
Hello and welcome to the Next Class. I'm Rob Birdsell, your host. Welcome to the 5th season. Amazing that we've been doing this for 5 years. Shaking it up a little bit this year, I'm going to have two co-hosts alternating. First is Dr. Erin Barisano, who is joining us from Orange County. And the second is Kent Hickey, joining us from the great state of rainy Washington, where he is glad it's raining. I think the only person I've ever heard before the show is he gets excited when it rains. Tells you a lot about Kent, actually. But welcome, Kent and Erin, to the Next Class. Super excited for the season. To begin with, for our regular listeners, could you introduce yourselves? And Erin, we'll begin with you.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Dr. Erin Barisano. I'm the superintendent of Catholic schools here in the Diocese of Orange, and super happy to be here and to talk about all things education.
Well, Erin, you're being very humble in your introductions. Erin has got an impressive resume. She was a school leader, a K-12, K-8 principal. She was assistant superintendent in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles before becoming the superintendent of Orange County, and just highly respected from the school leaders I know in Orange County and in LA. So Erin, very happy to have you joining us this season, and we're going to have some great conversations. And Kent,
Thanks, Kent.
Your turn.
And I would add, well-known and respected nationally for Erin. It's amazing the number of people that know her work and speak so highly of her. Hi, everyone. I'm Kent Hickey. I'm in Olympia, Washington, a little south of Seattle, and we're at 62 and rainy and loving it. My wife, Terry, and I, we live here. We have three children in their 20s that also live here in Washington State. I served in Catholic schools for about 35 years, including a head of 3 schools for about, I think it was 24 years. What I'm doing now is a couple of things. I'm a search consultant for Carney Sando and Associates out of Boston in the Catholic school practice. So I continue to focus on Catholic schools. And then I'm the director of leadership formation at this wonderful new organization called ILE that has been a real blessing. I have a pretty difficult boss, but otherwise it's a fantastic place to work. So happy to be with you all. Rob is my boss.
And I like to say it's pretty funny. I began my career working for Kent. I was hired as a teacher at Marquette University High School, and Kent is ending his career working for me. All things turn out good in this world. It should be noted that Erin is also a colleague of ours at ILE, the Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship in Education, where she and Kent are the moderators for Cohort 1.
Yep.
And Erin will be moderating Cohort 3, along with a great friend of ours in Preston Kendall. Kent will be doing Cohort 2 with a friend of ours who's been on the show, Katie Everett. So if you're not familiar with ILE, please reach out to any one of us and we'd be happy to share more about this formation for Catholic school leaders. But let's jump into the next class. So when we are launching this, one thing I just wanted to ask each of you is what are you excited about? Why did you say yes when I asked you to join me? And what is it that you're looking forward to this season? And let's change it up this time. We'll start with you, Kent.
All right. For years, one of my mantras has been that the fourth R of Catholic schools is relationships. And I worked in diocesan schools, and I also worked in Jesuit schools. And regardless of whether they be diocesan or Jesuit religious order, whatever it might be, the key to the strength of our schools is always about relationships. When we are together, we are exceptionally strong. As a matter of fact, I think that one of the best things during the pandemic, which was not an awesome thing, obviously, but what ended up happening is that we really dove into, I'd say nationally, our relationships with each other. And even when there are times when schools might be rivals and those types of things, it went away because when it comes down to it, we are all committed to Catholic schools. We all believe that our children are made in the image of God, and that's what binds us together. So one of the reasons why I said yes to it is because, as I mentioned before, Rob is my boss. But the second and more important reason is that it's yet another opportunity to foster relationships, to grow relationships. And I have really enjoyed doing that over the last couple of years with Carney Sando and the work with Eiley, and now to be able to do it in podcasts. So for me, it's all about the relationships, and it's a real blessing. I can't wait for this season. I'm really grateful to be part of it.
Kent, that's interesting. I had not thought about that, but I mean, over the past 4 years, as the people have come on to this podcast, it's relationship driven, whether it's Father Foley talking about moving into retirement and what that discernment was like for him. And for the hundreds of people that listened to that, to hear his discernment as he moved from, an incredible founder of Christ Rey to a retirement home. That was an amazing story and relationship that he shared with what was then shared with all the Christ Rey schools, for them to hear his process of discernment to make the decision to move to a retirement home. So wonderful thoughts. So Erin, we'll shift to you.
Yeah, no, thanks. I've been in Catholic education for 26 years now. The majority of that as an administrator. I taught for 8 years, but then moved into administration fairly young, as I knew that's where God was calling me, and that the gifts and talents that I had to give back to the Catholic school community. And so one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is just expanding that vision of education. Like I said, I've been my entire career has been with Catholic education, and continuing to learn by meeting new people, hearing their story. I think one of the things that we don't always do well enough is to tell our story, and we can learn so much when we share our stories with one another. Really excited to hear about those across the country. The school reforms that are going on, the school choice, how public policy affects what we do in Catholic education, and then those outside of the world of Catholic education, and how we can learn from one another, support one another, and again, just continue to move this forward with leadership, with innovation, and again, that support that we all need in educating our youth. So. Super excited to learn. I know we have some pretty interesting guests, again, coming from across the country, and a variety of backgrounds, and kind of their touch points with education as well.
That's great, Erin. Thank you. And you're right. We do have our first guest confirmed. So Erin and I will be having a conversation with two of her colleagues, Father John Belmonte, the superintendent of the Diocese of Venice, Sarasota, Florida, and her colleague, Dr. Jim Rigg, the superintendent of the Archdiocese of Miami. Right. And what we'll be talking about is the impact of school choice on their schools. It's pretty remarkable. It's almost astounding, to be honest with you, that the Archdiocese of Miami high schools last year were full. They were all full. And in talking to Father Belmonte, all he talks about is opening new schools and growing and being creative, and all because the state of Florida has universal school choice, where every family is given an opportunity to choose what is the best education for their children. And Erin, that's going to be a fun one. Those are
I'm so excited. I'm from the great state of California, where this has been kind of a pipe dream for us here. But I will say we're starting those conversations, and I think getting a little more serious, coming around the table to talk about it. So super excited to talk to my colleagues in Florida, just to hear just again that impact, right? The impact that public policy has on our schools, and how that really can help us support to our mission, to further that mission, to reach more families, and break down those barriers of accessibility to our schools. So much to learn from them, and they're both great at what they do. So it'll be a fun conversation.
Yeah, no, they're too great. And I will say, with the work we've done in California, the enrollment in California is pretty darn strong. I mean, your school you're in, or
yes.
LA, Orange County, San Diego, it's strong enrollment.
Yeah, we were really successful. I know, Kent, you mentioned COVID, and I think our California schools, our Catholic schools in particular across our state, worked really hard to make sure that kids got back to school, and we were definitely ahead of our counter school, or our public school counterparts, and we saw a bump in enrollment, and we've been able to maintain that. So. It's funny that I think families that had never considered a Catholic education before, and when we were the only game in town that was in person, we got a lot of people coming to our schools, and again, for the most part, most of them have stayed. So it's again a beautiful thing when you talk about expansion of mission.
A friend of all of ours, Pat Ruff, who is the president of Woodside Priory, 80% of his students are not Catholic, and remarkable. But they love the education, the community. Pat has said they actually kind of like the monks walking around campus, and when you're in Silicon Valley, it's so countercultural, and it's pretty interesting and impressive to me that these families are choosing, this values-based Benedictine school, and great for Pat for just running such an outstanding school.
Do you two remember the song, they will know we are Christians by our love? That's kind of a interesting ring to it thing. But I really do think in COVID, and let's not in any way gloss over the problems we've had in Catholic schools and Catholic Church over these, recent decades. Certainly we're aware of that and how problematic that has been and terrible. But if you look at what happened with COVID, I'll go back to relationships, that those 80% that you're talking about, Rob, there's something that drew them, even if they can't say exactly what it is. And it's the love, it's the relationships. Yeah. I'm not making a negative comment about schools outside the Catholic school ecosystem. But what I am saying about the Catholic school ecosystem is that what drove a lot of these schools to do what they did from day one, just clicking on this, is for their love of students. And that's the biggest hope for our schools right there. That really showed then. And now the question is, how do we build on that momentum? And keep getting that word out and forward about it. And that's the connectivity and the relationships. But it's all grounded in love, particularly love of God that is all shared by all of us.
Yeah, and I just you use that word hope, and I think that I think so often we live in this kind of deficit mentality, right? We have so many empty seats, or we don't have enough money for this. I mean, there's so much that we can really focus on in terms of that deficit mentality. But we are people of hope, right? And I think that the last few years that we have so much not only to celebrate, but then to fuel that hope. And that's what gets me up every morning, brings me to my office. I'm so hopeful, not only for our schools, but for the future of our church. I am. And again, there's not, as you said, Kent, not to gloss over the challenges. Believe me, we have challenges. We all acknowledge that. But I think that we can't lose hope and to focus on that goodness and that beauty and again that mission with hope to bring.
Just build on that with Erin. And Erin and I, we love working together as moderators.
We do. So I know.
Naturally, but I think we just got to play off each other. But I'll just say that 35 years in Catholic schools, I've never been more hopeful than I am right now. And I think it's because of these connectivities, because of these relationships, and because we've gone through hard times together. Yeah. And also it's seeing the quality of leaders that we have out there. I mean, as I said, 35 years, and I'm only 42, so it's really, really surprising. But I will just say I'm really excited about the future and where this is going to be going. So,
and Kent, to that note, when I think of the first cohort of Eiley and those leaders, they are some of the most impressive people I've seen in my 30 years in Catholic education. And if that's the future of our schools, it's beyond hopeful. It's going to be darn exciting.
Yes.
So the second confirmed guest we have is Dr. Dan Porterfield, the CEO of the Aspen Institute. We're going to be talking with him about his new book, Mindset Matters, The Power of College to Activate Lifelong Growth. Dan has been a friend and colleague since I was hired to be the CEO of the Christ-Story Network. He was on the Christ-Story Network board, executive vice president at Georgetown University, where he was 110% committed to the Christ-Story students. He would meet with each one of them before the school year. He had a freezer full of ice cream in his office to attract the kids' relationship, Kent. He wanted them coming to his office. He would have a back-to-school barbecue with every one of them, with his family. He was so committed to these kids, and he and Jack DeGioia, the president of Georgetown, said, we're not going to be happy until we have 60 Cristo Rey students on campus, who all have a full ride, by the way. And they have been doing that for over 10 years now. And Dan was really the instigator and driver of Georgetown's commitment to Cristo Rey students. He then went on to Franklin and Marshall College as president, where he continued that passion for access. He had a number of KIPP students there. He had Cristo Rey students, Posse fellows, and just an incredible commitment to access. And that's what a lot of his book is about, that Kent, you and I are just getting into. But I would recommend any of our listeners that want to hear this conversation about the power of college to activate lifelong growth, get the book, read it, then listen to the podcast, because it's going to be super fun and engaging. Kent, any comments about Dan?
Yeah, it's a very good book. And by the way, I want to mention that you gave me an idea here. I always had a freezer full of ice cream in my office too, but I hadn't thought about sharing it. So that's really, really nice twist on that. This is a really interesting book, and it's going to be a great discussion at this particular time, because he's clearly an advocate for particularly a small college, well, any college, at a time when people are really questioning the value of college.
Right.
So instead of talking about it as it is normally talked about about college, the book is all about biographies. It's all about the stories of students. And his private school setting was not a Catholic or Christian setting, although again, he came from Georgetown. But I think it will really resonate with folks throughout our Catholic school ecosystem, because it's just a totally different way of thinking about this at a time when, college is under attack. So I think he's really being a leader in a new way to envision what this could be. I can't wait to talk to him. This is going to be terrific.
Ken, what I'd like to...
There you go. Mindset matters right there.
What I appreciate, so often it's just an economic play.
Sure.
Go to college to earn more money. But he's coming at it. He doesn't even talk about that. For him, it's all about the potential, the growth mindset that you can get from a college. And he talks about the 4-year in-person experience, which was, it's
true. But Rob, one thing I want to ask him about is the premise of it is the relationship with professors, what happens not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom and such. But an additional premise associated with that is that these are full-time people, because in order for them, these relationships, they're on campus. Sure. And we see that, like, let's say in the high school setting, I always thought, well, it's cheaper to hire someone part-time if they don't get benefits, what have you. But it's really not good for the school.
Right.
I mean, if you're going to school with a bunch of part-time people, relationships don't happen. But isn't it true that the way to survive economically right now in a lot of these small colleges is adjunct professors?
Sure.
Right. And so I want to ask him about that. Like, his whole premise is based upon the relationships, full-time people. How do you move toward that when there's such pressure to not do that?
And also, what role is online learning playing in his thinking, where 50% of university courses are delivered either online or blended? My question and argument would be, look at what we're doing here. 5 years ago, you guys would have to flown to Chicago to go to our studio to do this. Now we can be co-hosts from Washington, California, and Chicago. Right. And it's still relational.
Yes.
And so it'll be interesting to hear Dan's perspective on that. Which
right. Yeah, and I do think I think that again, the technology is here, the opportunities are here. How are we using that to ensure that relationships are not broken but continue to build them? So that's super interesting.
Yeah, and if you talk to young people, I've got 2 in college. They much prefer that blended.
I know.
So it'll be great to talk to Dan about how do you continue the relational in a blended or an online environment. And with that, we're going to take a brief break to hear from our sponsor.
Catholic Virtual is a proud sponsor of the Next Class 2.0 and dedicated to supporting Catholic school leaders. Our partner schools turn to us for online teaching solutions that fill teacher openings, expand their catalogs to offer more course choice, and provide options for students an alternative learning experience. Learn more about how we can support you at catholicvirtual.com.
And we're back. So, exciting guests we've got: Father Belmonte, Dr. Jim Rigg, Dr. Dan Porterfield. We'll have many more guests coming on. We're also going to be introducing another new piece to the next class 2.0, and that'll be listener questions. So mid-year, at semester break, the three of us are going to come back together, and we're going to hear from you. So we want to hear questions you have about the podcast. We won't do them immediately. We're going to wait till the end of the semester to do this mid-year listener questions. So please email me, and we'll put in the show notes how you can contact me, but it's rob.birdsell@catholicvirtual.com. And I will compile those over the semester, and then the three of us will reconvene again. It'll be the first time the three of us get back together because we'll each be kind of tag team in here throughout the semester.
Right.
But at the break, we'll come together and we'll hear from you. So questions that you have for us to dig deeper into with our podcast. And then also, what is something that you, start with you, Erin, on this one, that you're excited about in education today? As we, it's summer break, we're headed back into the school year. I know there's another week or two. We're recording this end of July. We'll be dropping in August. People are starting to come back. What as you head into the school year are you excited about, Erin?
I think now is a kind of going back to that idea of hope. Now is a great time for innovation in education, and I think that we have to be careful of not innovation for innovation's sake, but to really utilize that and being strategic about how does that then further our mission. I know I keep going back to mission because I think that for us to be successful, we absolutely have to be super clear and consistent about our mission. And so innovation can come in so many different forms. We're doing some new things here in the Diocese of Orange with governance of elementary schools. It can be I think usually people, when you think about innovation, you think of technology, and yes, but not always. I think sometimes going back to basics too, like working through the noise, because there's a lot of noise in what we do, and particularly in education. And again, just being super strategic about and really focused and how we can utilize maybe new ways of doing things, new approaches, utilizing our not only teaching and learning time, but also our collaboration time. And so again, I just think that there's I feel like we're just like scratching the surface here. We can get into, I mean, good Lord, so many technological advances just in the last few months, but really being strategic, intentional, thoughtful about how to utilize all of that to further our mission. And that's something that is very exciting to me. It really kind of fuels my desire for leadership to be able to support our schools, to be better so that they can be better, to be stronger so that they can be stronger, to be more faith-filled so that they can be more faith-filled.
Well, speaking of innovation, Erin, you and I are both engaged in something unique in your diocese. I'm on the board of the Cristo Rey Institute, which is a new public person, relatively new, that is the canonical sponsor of Cristo Rey Orange County, which that's an innovation. And kudos to our friend Father Garanzini, former president of Loyola University of Chicago, who, when learning that it was getting harder to find sponsors as in Orange County, the religious orders aren't there. So how do we keep going?
Well, and that's it. And I think that again, necessity kind of breeds this innovation. How can we think differently? How can we approach things differently so that we can continue to do what we do, and that is to create missionary disciples. I mentioned this new governance structure that we took 5 of our under-enrolled, struggling elementary schools and formed a governing board. They're called our Pax Christi Academies. We just hired a president, and continue to be in partnership with our parish families and our pastors. But really, that governance, the operations, all of that will be overseen by this board of directors. So just a really different way of doing things. The traditional parish school has served us well for over 100 years, and now we need to think a little bit differently, particularly for those communities in which the parish can't can't continue to support the school in the way that it needs to be supported.
And that model, Erin, is happening all across the country, which is exciting to see. It's our friend
Right.
Katie Everett in Boston is engaged with that. Josh Hale in Chicago is doing it, and
Yep.
it's up in Oakland. Andrew Courier's got it going, and
Right. And I think it's great opportunity, and call to action for the laity, right? I mean, we've been given gifts and talents, and how do we then utilize all of that coming together? As you mentioned, going back to relationship, people who are passionate about Catholic education, and quite honestly, that are smarter than I am in terms of running businesses and things like that. And so we need to come together to support things that are most valuable to us. And for us, that's Catholic education. So I think that there's a lot to look forward to, a lot to be excited about.
absolutely. Kent?
No? Well, related to what Erin just talked about, where you ended up with relationships, what I was thinking about was, and this is an opportunity and a challenge, is how willing now lay people are to embrace the spirituality of a school, that they are, a phrase that we use, a spiritual, let's say the principal president is a spiritual CEO. And you just can't say, well, Father so-and-so handles that. Because
Right.
number one, Father so-and-so ain't around anymore. But number two, it's just a cop-out, okay? Lay people, as part of their baptismal promise, is also to exert leadership in the church. So I'm really excited about where things are going, because I'm seeing more and more of the embracing of spirituality amongst leaders and amongst schools, and not farming it out. And just give two quick examples of that. Two searches. I'm working on one right now for Carnegie Sando, but one I finished up in the spring. Central Catholic in Pittsburgh, wonderful school. Well, their principal, this was the first time in 100 years, it wasn't going to be a Christian brother, okay? But there's still a Christian brother community there. They embrace the thought of lay people doing this, and they're going to support this. So it's not as if lay people are on their own when we can collaborate, in this case with Christian brothers. And then right now, just finished a position description for a search that we're doing. This is for president down at St. Francis, down closer by you, Erin, in Pasadena, right? And this is a Franciscan school, and they've always had a Franciscan, a Capuchin, as a president, and now that may not happen. But if you look at the lay people who are on the search committee, they're not afraid of this. They're embracing it. So we just got done with the position description. It is full of Franciscan values. And they're not shying away from it. Like, this is who we are, and they're using words like humility, like they use it 4 times. It's not a word I'm necessarily accustomed to, and it was absolutely wonderful what they were doing. But they're really deep in the face. So I'm really excited, because I think we're finally moving more in Catholic education to reflect what the church is like. Is lay leaders, be leaders. Do this. And we're seeing this. We need to see it more on boards. We need to see it more amongst leaders.
Right.
And that's what the challenge is. You still do encounter problems with this, but we're moving in a really good direction.
Great. Well, thank you both. I'll share what I'm excited about, which is a new.
Rob, what are you excited about?
I'm getting there. Competency-based education, CBE, is a new movement. The Carnegie Foundation, which 100 years ago came out with the Carnegie Unit, which has really driven American education. Seat time. It was all about seat time. So that when Erin is flying through Algebra 1 and I'm struggling, we're still going at the same pace, even though she's like 10 pages ahead of me. In this new model of CBE, which the Carnegie Foundation is working on, Erin would keep going, and I would go at my pace. Now, in English, I might be going faster than her, but it's all who's got the competency and mastery. The mastery versus just getting a grade for getting a grade. I mean, we all began as teachers, and we know those kids that should have been going way ahead. And those, they were the classroom is like this. And they keep going like this because of the Carnegie Unit. Well, Carnegie, luckily, has recognized that's not what this is about. And so I don't know how it's going to come about or what it is, but I think CBE, competency-based education, is something I'm super excited about to watch this year. A good friend of mine, Laura Slover, is the CEO of the initiative. She's in my Aspen Pahara cohort, and so we'll likely get her on the podcast this season and hear about that. But that's something I'm super excited about, and where AI is going. AI is here. Like you're not having it, and have been having talks around the country around the subject. And I would say it's almost unanimous now. When I gave a talk on AI 6 months ago to the LaSallian administrators, only about 5 had used AI. When I gave it the other day to 35 administrators and teachers at the FACS conference, every one of them had used an AI. So that it's people are using it now, and we'll definitely have a guest on or two this season to talk about AI in education and share best practices and the things like hallucinations, which is when it spits out incorrect information. How are they prepared to recognize a hallucination and things of that? So that's another one I'm excited about. But to wrap things up here, thank you both for joining me today and for this whole season. And we're going to end as we end every next class. And Ken, we'll start with you this time. Who is your greatest teacher and why?
I'd say my mom, who's still with us. She's 89 years young, living in Richmond, Virginia, and born and raised in New Hampshire. Tells it like it is. And I'd say my mom.
That's awesome. You're going to have to send this to her. That'll make her day. And Erin, how about
she
you?
has no idea how to access technology, but we'll try.
If Father Foley at 88 knows how to do this, you can get your mom to do it.
All right, we'll get it to her.
Send her the link, and she just clicks the link, and she can listen.
All right.
Erin, how about you?
Yeah, it's so funny as you ask the question, like flash through all the women religious, that have taught me and had such an impact on me. But there was a woman in my life, not a woman religious, Mrs. Bess Bergman, was a great mentor and a teacher. She was our neighbor, and she passed away a number of years ago, but her birthday's tomorrow. And so she's been on my mind and in my heart, and the impact. She was actually a teacher by profession, but she really formed me and taught me really about the love of the human race, and was a woman way before her time. And so I think fondly about her. I'm very grateful that she was in my life and think about her often.
That's great.
How about you, Rob?
No one's ever asked me that question. 5 seasons, you're the first one. Surprise, surprise, Ken. And like everyone who has been asked that question, there's so many people. And when I think about the favorite teacher, I think about the person who probably had the greatest impact on my life. And Ken, someone Father Warren Sazama.
Oh, yeah.
A Jesuit priest who was a theology teacher at the time. And hosted we had a CLC group, and he talked about someone way ahead of their time. It's a Marquette University High School, downtown Milwaukee, kids coming from all over. And he said, we're going to form a group, but I want 3 kids from the North Shore, 3 from the North Side, 3 from the West Side, and 3 from the South Side. And he was way before anyone was into diversity, equity, and inclusion. This was like 1985. And he was like, I want kids from all over this. I want diversity. I don't want, 15 kids from the North Side. And so, he's an incredibly formative part of my life.
And we're going to be using one of his writings for an upcoming ILE seminar.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, since you shared that story, I just want to share very quickly when I said, Mom, Beverly Faye Hickey is very direct. Do you know, I said to her once, you'd get all these parents that would complain about why their kids not getting playing time in sports, right? I mean, and it's like, oh my, please. So I remember asking my mom this, a few years ago, like, oh, Mom, it's so hard. They're always complaining about this. And I said, I played football in high school. And I said, Mom, did you ever you and Dad ever complain about, my lack of playing time, in high school football? And she said, oh, honey, we were just so busy, and honestly, you just weren't very good. So and I'm kind of like, well, that's actually true. So I started saying that to parents. That's why I'm not ahead of school anymore.
I'm sure that went over really well. Yeah.
You gotta say things like, oh yeah, they're Olympic bound. Oh yeah.
Great. Well, thank you guys for joining us. It's going to be a fun season 5. And to our listeners, if you've enjoyed this, share it with your friends and family. Like us on whatever platform you're listening to us. And we hope that you follow us for the season. We're going to have some great guests and great conversations. So until next time, on the next class, have a wonderful end of the summer.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in.